What is going on, guys? Ray here, PapaReys Boom Boom Room. I want to thank you guys for tuning in on another week's episode, Week 8 of the NFL season, Stardom Sittums, Weekly Picks. I want to thank all of you guys who, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. TikTok was popping last week. A little bit overwhelming, honestly. A lot of comments, a lot of people asking me for fantasy advice, but I love it. I love it. And I appreciate you guys for supporting the brother. Just trying to talk about sports and help y'all with y'all fantasy and win y'all some money if you do picks. Last week, week 7, you had Philadelphia over the Giants, 22-21. Buffalo over the Jets, 18-10. Detroit over Atlanta, 23-22. Cleveland over Cincinnati, 37-34. Green Bay over Houston, 35-20. New Orleans over Carolina, 27-24. Washington over Dallas, 25-23. That was a mollywhopping. Pittsburgh over Tennessee, 27-24. Tampa Bay over Las Vegas, 45-20. Kansas City over Denver, 43-16. San Francisco over New England, 33-6. The Chargers over Jacksonville, 39-29. Arizona over Seattle, 37-34. And the Rams over Chicago, 24-10. A great week of football. I did pretty good. I think I missed about 3 games from my picks. So that's a pretty good percentage. I'm not going to front. Let's jump straight into our Stardom Sittums, starting with the quarterback position. I'm going to go ahead and say start Justin Herbert versus Denver. Start Carson Wentz versus the Cowboys. Start Teddy Bridgewater versus Atlanta. Start Ryan Tannehill versus the Bengals. Start Derek Carr versus the Browns. Sit Kirk Cousins versus Green Bay. Sit Big Ben versus the Ravens. Sit whoever's going to be quarterback for the Patriots. Sit Tua versus the Rams. And sit Drew Brees versus the Chicago Bears. Go ahead and move on to running backs. Start Boston Scott versus Dallas. Start Melvin Gordon versus the Chargers. Start Fournette or Jones, maybe at flex versus the Giants. Same thing with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Bell. You could flex one of them versus the Jets. Same thing with Moss and Singletary versus New England. One of them I think you'll be able to flex. Jonathan Taylor versus the Lions. Sits Carlos Hyde versus San Francisco. Any of the Los Angeles Chargers running backs versus Denver. Same thing with New England running backs versus Buffalo. Same thing with the Giants running backs versus Tampa Bay. Sit them. And I would also sit Mark Ingram versus Pittsburgh if he even plays, coming back of that high ankle sprain. Wide receivers. I would start Travis Fulgham versus Dallas. Start Jefferson or Thielen versus Green Bay. Brandon Ayuk versus Seattle with Deebo Samuel out. Mike Evans versus the Giants with Godwin out. Beasley or John Brown versus New England. And I would start Ruggs or Engelor versus the Browns. Sits. I would sit any Dolphins wide receiver with Tua starting. Not sure how he's going to play. So I would be just careful this week. And just if you have somebody else, I would sit them just to see how this game plays out. Sit Julian Edelman versus the Bills. Sit Juju Smith-Schuster versus the Ravens. Sit any of the Cowboys wide receivers versus the Eagles. I'm not even sure if Andy Dalton's going to play this week. They're just doing terrible. That's a terrible football team right there. Sit Darius Slayton versus Tampa Bay. And sit T.Y. Hilton versus Detroit. Moving on to tight ends. I'm going to go ahead and say start Jonnu Smith versus the Bengals. Start Jimmy Graham versus the Saints. Start Gronk, who has finally, past 2 weeks been balling. Start him versus the Giants. Start Noah Fant versus the Chargers. Start Richard Rodgers versus the Cowboys. Tight ends is sit. Sit Evan Ingram versus the Bucks. Sit Eric Ebron versus the Ravens. Sit Greg Olsen versus the 49ers. Sit Mike Gesicki again to his first start versus the Rams. And sit Robert Tonyan versus the Vikings. Moving on to kickers. I'm just going to say my starts. Of course, start Rodrigo Blankenship versus the Lions. Start Mason Crosby versus the Vikings. Start McManus versus the Chargers. Start Jake Elliott versus the Cowboys. Start Randy Bullock versus the Titans. And start Will Lutz versus Chicago. For defenses, other than the obvious, I would start the Chargers versus the Broncos. Start the Bills over the Pats. Eagles over the Cowboys. Rams over the Dolphins. And Colts over the Lions. So those are my stardom situms. Like I said last week, if you guys have any questions, hit me up on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Comment on any of the videos below. I'll be working on some of my TikTok videos soon, right after this. So here we go with my Week 8 picks. I'm going to say Carolina Panthers over the Falcons. I'm going to say Packers over the Vikings. Titans over the Bengals. Chiefs over the Jets. Lions over the Colts. Ravens over the Steelers. I'm going to love watching that game. Rams over the Dolphins. Bills over the Pats. Raiders over the Browns. Chargers over the Broncos. Saints over the Bears. Seahawks over the 49ers. Eagles over the Cowboys. And Tampa Bay over the New York Giants. So that's going to do it, you guys. Real quick episode for Week 8. Like I say before, check your waiver wires, check injuries, make sure you're not starting somebody that's not playing, somebody that's on a bye, and try to do that before Sunday at 1 o'clock, because if not, you might get stuck with a bunch of goose eggs. Like I said before, if you guys haven't already, follow me on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Follow me on all platforms. And I look forward to your guys' questions and giving you guys advice. You guys have a blessed weekend and a great fantasy football week.